Sometimes people ask a small, simple question that stays with you for years. For me, it began when a friend looked up from his phone, sighed, and said, "If you were as famous as those big Hollywood actors, do you think you'd finally feel like your life was enough?" He was scrolling through photos of red carpets and interviews. Bright lights, perfect smiles, crowds of people aiming their cameras in the same direction. On the screen, two actors walked side by side, dressed simply, almost quietly, as if they hadn't noticed the world staring at them. My friend kept talking about followers, headlines, and how being known by millions must feel like a permanent approval stamp on your existence. But my attention stayed with that quiet image. Two people, surrounded by noise, choosing to walk through it as if they were just out for a normal afternoon. There was something almost mysterious about it. Not the mystery of a plot twist, but the kind that makes you stop and think, what do they know that the rest of us keep missing? That night I lay in bed with my phone in my hand, the room dark except for the blue light on my face. I scrolled past more images, more interviews, more opinions. Everyone seemed to be reaching for something. More attention, more praise, more confirmation that they mattered. And I wondered, not for the first time, why it all felt so exhausting. The question my friend asked kept echoing in my mind. Would fame finally make life feel enough? Strangely, the more I thought about it, the less the world's idea of enough made sense. Years earlier, when I was still in school, I remember how desperately I wanted to be noticed. Not famous, exactly, but important. I thought importance would look like high scores, applause after presentations, my name being mentioned in rooms I wasn't in. I measured my worth in how loudly the world seemed to say my name. When someone praised me, I felt taller. When a teacher read my essay out loud, my chest warmed with a quiet fire of pride. For a little while, I would walk differently, as if the floor itself had become softer under my feet. But it always faded. A week later, I would need something new, a better grade, a bigger compliment, a fresh sign that I still mattered. Looking back, I can see how tired I was, even then. It's exhausting to live as if your entire self is something you have to repeatedly prove. I carried that pattern with me into adulthood. The tools changed, social media, job titles, performance reviews, but the hunger was the same. I wanted something outside me to look back at me, nod, and say, "Yes, you're enough now." One evening, after a long day at work and another performance evaluation that left me both relieved and strangely empty, I went for a walk. It was winter. The air had a quiet sharpness to it. Every breath felt like it was cleaning a small part of my mind. I walked without a plan, just letting my feet follow the pavement. Somewhere near the park, I paused at a cafe window. A television inside was playing an interview. The sound was low, but the subtitles ran across the bottom. It was an interview with two well-known actors. You would recognize their faces from billboards and movie posters, but in that moment they looked almost ordinary. Soft clothes, relaxed posture, a kind of ease around their own fame that surprised me. One of them was being asked about the strange pressure of constantly being watched, photographed, commented on. He smiled in a shy, almost hesitant way, then said, "You know, the cameras go away, the noise dies down. At some point you have to be able to sit in a quiet room with yourself and not feel like you disappear." The other actor nodded and added, "Fame doesn't really fill anything. It only makes what's already there louder." I didn't stand there for long. The cold pushed me to keep moving. But those two sentences threaded themselves into the corners of my mind and settled there, waiting. Over the next few months, I started noticing how deeply we, as a culture, are drawn to being seen. A friend would post a photo and check her phone every few minutes, each new like giving her a brief flash of satisfaction. A colleague would complain that his hard work wasn't recognized enough by upper management. Even older relatives, who used to roll their eyes at social media, started talking about how many people had watched their new cooking video. It wasn't that any of this was bad in itself. Connection is human. Praise can be kind. Being seen can feel like being held. But beneath it all, I sensed the same question pressing on everyone's ribs. Do I matter? Am I enough? The modern world's answer is loud and consistent. You will matter when there are enough eyes on you. You will be enough when you are admired by enough people. It's an answer that never truly satisfies because its terms keep changing. One day 1,000 views feels like a lot. The next day it feels small compared to someone else's million. One promotion feels like success until you realize someone your age is already running a department. Fame, even in its small everyday forms, has no natural endpoint. It's a hunger that learns to want more the moment it tastes something. And yet there are people who live within that system and somehow don't let it own them. When I would see certain actors or artists in interviews, the same ones my friend had shown me on his phone that day, it struck me how their faces softened when they talked about simple things. A quiet walk, cooking a meal, visiting family far from Hollywood. They were surrounded by the machinery of global attention, yet they kept returning to ordinary life as if that was where the real treasure was buried. I didn't know their private lives, of course. I only knew the glimpses they allowed the world to see. But those glimpses were enough to plant a seed. Maybe it was possible to be known by many and still live as if the most important audience was just a small circle of real faces, or even just yourself. That idea felt both comforting and challenging. Comforting, because it suggested that the madness of constant visibility wasn't the only way to live. Challenging, because it questioned how I was living, even in my completely ordinary, non-famous life. One Sunday morning, I decided to experiment with a very small kind of simplicity. I turned my phone off and put it in a drawer. Not on silent, not on the table, away, out of reach. For one day, I would let the world continue without my attention. I would walk through the hours as if I were anonymous, unneeded, unseen. At first, it felt strange. My hand kept drifting to where my phone usually lay. Moments that might have been instantly shared, sunlight pouring onto the kitchen counter, the pattern of steam rising from my coffee, stayed quietly with me. Without the constant pull to capture and broadcast, the day opened up in a different way. I read without checking the time. I took a long walk and noticed how many small lives were unfolding around me. A child pulling at her father's sleeve to show him a particularly interesting rock. An older couple sitting on a bench sharing a sandwich in comfortable silence. A dog trotting proudly with a stick twice its size. No one knew where I was. No one was waiting for me to upload anything. For a few hours, I did not exist in the glowing rectangles of anyone's screen. I existed only in this simple space. The weight of my own body on the ground, the sound of my footsteps, the gentle stirring of my thoughts. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't have any sudden revelation, but there was a quiet clarity. Life still happens even when no one is watching. In that realization was something both obvious and oddly liberating. So much of the world's message suggests that experiences are more valuable when they are seen and approved by others. Yet here, in this unnoticed walk, was a contentment that didn't ask to be recorded. I went home, cooked a plain meal, and ate slowly. As the day ended, the silence around me felt like a soft blanket rather than an empty space. Only later did I turn my phone back on. There were messages, missed calls, notifications. The world had kept churning, as always, but I saw all of it from a slightly greater distance, as if the volume had been turned down a little. That small experiment didn't change my life overnight. I still checked my phone more than I needed to. I still felt a flicker of pride when something I shared was praised, and a sting when it was. These habits run deep. But the seed had been planted. I found myself asking a new question whenever I felt that old hunger for recognition rise up. If no one knew about this, would it still be meaningful to me? Sometimes the answer was yes. A conversation with a close friend, a quiet moment reading, the satisfaction of finishing a piece of work I was proud of, regardless of who noticed. Those experiences felt real, solid, complete in themselves. Other times, I had to admit that I wanted certain things mostly for how they would look from the outside. A title, a photo in a particular place, an achievement that would make a good story. When I saw that clearly, I didn't always drop the desire, but I held it more lightly. I could see how fragile it really was. At some point, I came across another interview clip with those same actors my friend had shown me. One of them was being asked why they didn't share more about their private life online, given how much their fans wanted to see. They paused, thinking, then said something simple. I like having parts of my life that belong only to me and the people I love, not because I'm hiding them, but because they're not made for everyone. They're made for us. The interviewer nodded politely, but the weight of that answer stayed with me long after the clip ended. There was something quietly radical in the idea of keeping parts of your life small on purpose, not out of fear, but out of respect. Respect for your own inner world, for the people you're actually sharing it with, and for the difference between being known and being displayed. The world we live in doesn't precisely encourage that. It tends to reward exposure. The more you show, the more attention you get. The more attention you get, the more successful you appear. To choose simplicity, especially when you could have spectacle, can feel almost like going against gravity. Yet there they were, people who had every opportunity to turn their entire existence into a performance, quietly holding back, choosing an ordinary walk, a private meal, a home life that didn't exist for cameras. It made me realize that simplicity is not the absence of opportunity, but the deliberate refusal to be owned by it. Over time, I began to understand that what I envied in such people wasn't their fame at all. It was their apparent ease with not needing it. In my own life, that translated less into dramatic lifestyle changes and more into small, consistent decisions. Sometimes it meant closing my laptop when I had technically finished enough for the day, even if staying late might have made me look more dedicated. Instead of trying to be seen as the hardest worker, I tried to be present for a simple dinner at home, fully there with whoever I was sharing it with. Sometimes it meant taking a walk without posting about it, letting the moment be complete without witnesses. Sometimes it meant listening to someone else talk without mentally preparing how their story might relate back to me. Letting them be the main character for a while without trying to compete for attention. And sometimes it meant sitting alone in a room, no music, no distractions, just feeling whatever was actually moving through me. Boredom, sadness, contentment, confusion, without reaching for something louder to drown it out. None of this looks impressive from the outside. It doesn't translate into a highlight reel. But piece by piece, it began to change the texture of my days. The strange thing is, the quieter my life became in these ways, the more solid it felt. The less I tried to prove that I mattered, the more I could quietly sense that I did. Not because I was doing anything extraordinary, but because I was here at all, breathing, feeling, choosing how to spend these brief years I've been given. Of course, there are still days when I get caught up in comparison. A coworker's promotion makes me doubt my own path. An acquaintance's viral post triggers that familiar itch of maybe I should be chasing something bigger. On those days, I sometimes return to a mental image. Two well-known figures walking down a street, dressed simply, laughing at something ordinary. Not a scene from a movie, just two humans moving through the world like anyone else. I think about how easy it would be for them to live entirely inside the bubble of their public image, to define themselves by their most visible moments. And I think about what it must have taken, internally, to choose another way. To protect their own right to smallness, to privacy, to days that belong to no one else's expectations. It makes me consider my own choices. I may not have cameras following me, but there are still scripts the world hands me. Work harder, show more, be louder, gather proof of your importance. And then there is another path. Do your work sincerely, love a few people well, enjoy small things deeply, leave some parts of your life unshared, unpolished, undisplayed. Let your sense of worth grow from how closely you are living to your own values, not from how brightly your life appears from the outside. That second path is quieter. It doesn't come with applause, but it often feels more like breathing at a natural pace rather than constantly gasping. One evening, after a particularly overwhelming week, I sat by my window watching the sky slowly darken. The city lights began to appear, one by one, like quiet stars turning on at ground level. Inside the rooms across from mine, people moved about living their own small, invisible dramas and joys, cooking, laughing, arguing, resting. None of them were famous. None of them were being photographed for a magazine cover. And yet, in each lit window, there was a whole world of meaning. Someone worrying about their child, someone planning a future trip, someone remembering a lost love, someone simply enjoying the taste of their tea. It struck me then that the world's obsession with fame is almost like staring only at the mountain peaks, and forgetting that most of life happens in the valleys, in kitchens, on buses, in small offices and quiet bedrooms. We talk so much about the people at the top that we forget the fullness of the landscape below. But the truth is, even the people on the peaks eventually have to come back down. They too go home, take off their public clothing, wash their faces, worry about groceries, listen to the rain at night, wonder about the meaning of their own existence. Underneath the layers of attention, they are simply human, frightened sometimes, grateful sometimes, lonely sometimes, at peace sometimes, just like the rest of us. Realizing this didn't make fame seem evil or meaningless. It simply made it look like what it is, a kind of spotlight that can illuminate you or blind you, depending on how firmly your feet are planted in the basic ground of being human. And that ground is the same for all of us, whether our names are known by millions or only by a few. In a world obsessed with fame, there is something quietly heroic about choosing simplicity. Not the kind of simplicity that is forced on you by lack of opportunity, but the kind you practice on purpose, turning your attention toward the people in front of you, the work you can do well, the moments you can inhabit fully, the values you can live by when no one is watching. It means accepting that a meaningful life might never trend, never go viral, never be widely celebrated, and realizing, slowly and deeply, that this does not make it less meaningful. It means recognizing that the applause you secretly long for may never come in the form you expect, and allowing that to be okay, because you are learning to listen for a quieter voice inside that says, "This is good. This is enough." It means seeing your own worth not as a brightness that needs to outshine others, but as a steady, gentle light that does its work in the room you are actually in. Some people, even in the center of the public eye, seem to have discovered this. They move through the noise without letting it define them. They treat their fame almost as an accident of their work, not as the core of who they are. They return again and again to simple things, friendships that existed before the spotlight, routines that keep them grounded, acts of kindness that go unnoticed by the world. We may never know the full story of how they learned to live that way, but we can learn from the shape of their choices. And we can ask ourselves softly, in the privacy of our own thoughts, if the world never claps for me, can I still live a life I respect? If no one is watching, can I still choose to be kind? If nothing I do ever becomes widely known, can I still find beauty in these ordinary days? The answer will not arrive all at once. It will grow slowly, like a plant you water with each small act of presence and sincerity. But over time, you may notice a shift. The craving for attention becomes less sharp. The pressure to constantly prove yourself softens. You begin to taste a different kind of freedom, the freedom of not having to perform your existence. In that freedom, a simple truth unfolds itself, gently like a page being turned. Your life does not become meaningful when enough people see it. It becomes meaningful when you are truly living it, fully, honestly, right where you are. And in a world that shouts about fame from every screen, there may be nothing more quietly revolutionary than that.